I'm Matthew McCabe. Welcome to Miracle Voices. Each episode, we will be delving into stories of forgiveness, healing, and transformation that have come about from integrating the principles of the book A Course in Miracles. If you want to learn more about A Course in Miracles, visit www.acim.org. If you'd like to visit the Miracle Voices site, please go to www.miraclevoices.org. If you feel inspired to make a love offering, please visit us at miraclevoices.org/donate. All donations go to support the work of the Foundation for Inner Peace, the publisher of A Course in Miracles. Now here's your program. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Miracle Voices. This is Matthew McCabe, and I'm here with my co-host, Judy Scutch-Whitson. Hi, Judy.
Hello there, Matt. I'm delighted to be here today.
Me too, and we have our guest today, Felix Alcala. Felix, did I get it all right?
You get it perfectly. Thanks, Matt.
Okay. Felix, where are you joining us from today?
I'm based in Munich, Germany, and this is where I'm joining from.
Okay. And Felix, tell us a little bit about how the course came into your life.
Well, I was studying like computer science and economics, and when that was about to end, I was sort of looking for a place for me in the world. Like, what is it that I want to do with my life? And the whole idea of getting a house and getting children and working and then dying, that never seemed to be a purpose. So I was looking for like a real purpose. I don't know, saving the children or saving the seas or something. But I was at a loss because, like, if I save the children, the whales are still gonna die, and if I focus on the whales, then the children are still not fed or whatever. So I was getting in a really dark place in my mind because I felt like there's no way out, and no matter what I want and what I do, there's no real solution. And this is when I prayed, please God, I need a teacher, because I had read in a spiritual book that I read about a guy who had a teacher, and that made sense to me. So I said, I need a teacher. And then shortly after, I found my teacher. I found two teachers, but I didn't understand it at the time. I found a person, and I found the Course in Miracles. So the person was teaching the Course in Miracles. And at the time I thought that the person, that's my teacher. Now I would say, well, the book, Jesus is my teacher and the person. But at the time I found that person, and the person was teaching Course in Miracles. And that made a lot of sense to me. He explained it in a way where it's like, okay, but as long as you are part of creating a world that eventually dies, you're never going to be happy. And that made sense to me. So then I was hooked into the course.
Wow.
Now, how old were you at the time, Felix?
I was 25 at the time.
So you had your midlife crisis early.
Yeah. I had it, like a.
I love that, because as I noticed years ago that many people weren't asking that question until later in their lives. And you were the first one I'd met who started in questioning the whole meaning of life and who we really were pretty early on. I was very impressed with that. It bode well for the future.
Yeah.
What was it like being in a Course in Miracles community at a young age too?
Yeah. So I this teacher had well, when I met him, he didn't have a Course in Miracles community, but I was really looking for a place. Like, I wanted that God tells me what I should do, and I wanted to do his job. And so I made it my job to support this teacher. And a year later, we founded a Course in Miracles community. Well, I lived there for more than 7 years, so you can imagine the perspective changed. But when I joined, it was like a new family. I did abandon my normal family and went there, and I did abandon my friends and went there. I had like surrogate or replacement friends and family. And that felt really good for quite a while. Afterwards, I also wanted to be more in touch with my real family and my older friends. It was, of course, not the paradise that people like. We had guests coming, and they would always think, okay, a place where A Course in Miracles and all people doing the course, it's got to be paradise. It was not. It was like everyone comes with their ego, right? None of us is enlightened. And I think if you start the Course in Miracles, that doesn't mean you're at the end of the journey. You're still at the beginning. Yeah? You find a way, but you still need to walk it. So everyone had their problems and everyone had their anger issues. And I had my special little issue. I had a hobby as a teenager and then later in university as well. My hobby is a very stupid hobby, but nonetheless, it was really a hobby, a real passion. It was to fall in love with unattainable women. And then being incredibly sad that the whole thing didn't work out. So I could really cry a lot of tears over that. And sure enough, that teacher in that community, he had a wife. And lo and behold, I fell in love with her. So that's like the definition of an unattainable woman in some sense.
Setting yourself up for failure, right?
For sure. We were good friends, but there was like, it was really a setup. It was a real setup for me to learn the lesson that my idea of love is not the real idea of love, right? That's the biggest lesson in the beginning years of me being there is really, so if you think of what love is in the movies and stuff, it's always very possessive in a sense, like my wife or my and you, I want something from you and stuff, and I did not really succeed in convincing her that she should be giving her gifts to me. She was continuing to be, of course, with the main teacher. So undoing all of these false beliefs, what it really means to truly love, and I must say I was extremely impressed with both the teacher and the wife, because the teacher was really helping me through this without being envious, or at least not showing it. I mean, probably it was hard for him too, but he was really, to the best of his abilities, trying to help me go through and letting this idea that I should be with her, just letting that go. And that took years. And I was really lovesick. Is that what you call it in English, right? Lovesick, terribly lovesick. And to the point I would probably at some point jumped out of the window and tried to end it all. I was never really about to do it because I knew it wouldn't help me, because I would just end up in a new body with the same stupid pattern. So I wanted to get out of it. But it was really a couple of years of work for me to really work through that. And so if you ask how was it to live in a community, that was one part where this could heal. We were close, and this could really go by with all the forgiveness exercises that I had to do until I actually was there. But
it sounds to me like an addiction, and for you to recognize it early on, and then to have just the appropriate, most perfect situation and the teaching that goes with it through the course, it amazes me that this would be something that would be helpful to you in a community situation, and then you would act out that old romantic notion that we have in the world, giving to get, which of course is not love. Okay. So the course is about love. It says, teach only love, for that is who you are. But it's not the kind of in-loveness that we define in the world. And for you to go through this at pretty early age is kind of amazing. Some people take a whole lifetime to go through it and then probably maybe don't even get it. but that whole concept of the truth of love, that you are love, that God is love, that you are part of the divine, which is indeed love itself, is so hard to wrap your mind around. And you had it in spades. You were thrown right into the pit.
I was, and I can't say I learned this in all dimensions, but I did learn it. I think really, if I were to have a car accident today and I had a new life, or I still have a life ahead of me, I don't think I would need to learn that part again. I really think this thing is a hobby that I had, and I'm very glad. Yeah, an addiction. I never saw it like that, but you're right. You're absolutely right. It was like an addiction.
So Felix, in the community there, did you have a lot of like projections come up on you, and you project on other people, kind of your guilt and anger and fears? What's that like?
Yeah, the funny thing is, I don't know about. We never talked about projection because like the community was shaped by the teacher, right? So, and the teacher had the course, but they also had their particular way to look at it. So projection was not part of our main vocabulary. Forgiveness was, for sure. Controlling anger, letting go of anger. But I mean, you could see one particular dynamics. Everyone, at least as I experienced it, at some point, I saw how afraid everyone was of making mistakes, because that's bad. Like everyone was trying to do the course perfectly. At least that's how I experienced it. I can't say if it was like that, but I for sure, I know I wanted to impress everyone and the teacher, and I wanted to do my lessons right. And so there was at some point, a fear of making a mistake. Of course, that's not very wise, because then you make the mistake very big and into a very meaningful thing, as opposed to just laughing about it. But that was for certain something. And then it's just it's a mix. Like it's a really nice community spirit. And then people visiting, and they're very grateful. At the same time, people visiting also means egos visiting. So at some point I was like, oh, I just want to have a breakfast without the next person coming here and being upset about, I don't know what. I just want to have like a calm little nice breakfast. And that was towards later, where this whole healing was over, and I felt the weight of the place, in a sense, like this everyone coming with their problems, and it's so many people with so many problems. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe I just want to have a nice bowl of cereal and take a walk, and don't want to be so close to everyone's emotions, because we were really living very closely.
It sounds to me very intense. And
yes.
Well, you obviously were guided to choose this because you were dealing with an intense situation. Yeah. And the Course teaches us what love is, that we are love. So in that sense, the guilt and the judgment we have on ourselves and each other for not, quote, practicing the Course perfectly, it's like a cauldron. And it's constantly bubbling up. And with all those visitors coming with their takes, I can imagine that you went through a really intense, almost like a graduate course in how not to live your life. So I think for you, moving on was probably a graduation. And I'm sure you look back on it as tremendous learning. The thing I find out about healing is when we think that a situation is healed. In your situation, what you're talking about is the healing of yourself from a misperception about the meaning of love. Yeah. And if we don't accomplish it perfectly, even though we've been in the ringer and we think we've come out, it's going to come back. It's going to come back. But, I find it's never quite as intense. And so you say, oh, well, okay, I have forgiven myself for this, and here I go again. But it's not as harsh because you know better, and you know better how to shift your mind. Love and fear cannot coexist. So when you're in a situation where fear is constantly bred because you're judging yourself, whether it is your own particular problem or someone else's, um, it's very hard to feel what you really are, what is your natural inheritance. And in that case, moving on and having your own life and working it out your own way is very, very, I think it's very high learning.
Yeah. It was at the time when we met in 2014, right? So that
Yes.
was like 7 years later. I was still living there, but I was about to, I didn't know it at the time, but I was already moving, like about to move out of that. And yeah, something shifted in me over these years. And the funny thing is, like when I entered this place where I lived for all these years, well, I was very new to the course, so I would open the first chapter. I bought it online after meeting the teacher. Open the first chapter, the meaning of, is it the meaning? No, the principle of miracles. I was reading it. I didn't get anything. And when I was about to move out, I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This makes sense. So there was a lot of understanding growing in that time now. When I was living at that place, we had also books from different teachers all over the place, but they never really appealed to me. But when I visited you, I told you I'll also go down to Temecula, where Ken didn't live anymore, but the staff was still living. And that kind of teaching, that they had a slightly different angle to a couple of issues that I found interesting, and so that really changed, and I was wanting myself more to deepen that. And then, of course, the place where a different angle at least is taken is not the right place, so I had to move on. And it was a graduation. Yeah, before that, I couldn't understand anything in the course. Like, could be a foreign language.
Certainly challenging because the course is asking us to remember who we are in truth. And we have a great deal invested in the ego world that we made. And of course, since the Course in Miracles is a system of non-duality, there's only one reality, then it's extremely challenging, and it's a lifetime, and maybe, who knows, many lifetimes work to change your mind about it. I want to shift, if it's okay with you, because I was thinking as we're talking of the first time we met, and you came as a young person to a little tiny skeleton of an organization, and you had a vision. And the vision was, of course, a digital one, because that was your field. And we couldn't get it. I mean, we got you. We knew that here is a person who, well, is going to be close and friends for life, because we felt that. But we tried to follow you, and we couldn't quite see where your mind was going. I'd like you to address what's happened in the 7 years since.
Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly right. When we met, I had done international lessons website for you I think in Spanish or in German or in one or two languages. And I was always thinking, well, the course, it should not only be a book that you walk around with, it should be a website and an app, and it should remember where you were and so on. Like all apps now do, and back then also did, but they were not so widespread. It was not the time. So I had prepared all these ideas and I shared them with you. I was like, oh no, somehow it didn't ring true. And also I wasn't ready. I was about to move out of this place, and I still needed to have like a career or learn, go through. I then went to work in IT consultancy, which was a very fast-paced job. I learned a lot, and that was really, really intense. And I think somehow I also needed that. So I was also not ready in a sense. So maybe you didn't understand it, but also I wasn't ready. But then a couple of years later, we were talking about it again, and then we came together and said, now is the time to do. Well, at the time we called it digital edition, and now we call it web edition. So that's the first leg of it, where you have A Course in Miracles now on the web, and it's searchable, and you have the audio for the workbook. We want to add the whole audio to it at some point, and more languages and so on. We're also thinking of the app. So I don't know when this will air, but it will probably be a while. So maybe things have changed until this is to be heard.
It's it's an interesting thing about timing, isn't it? That the Foundation for Inner Peace, we weren't ready to absorb your vision, but we were ready to absorb you.
Yeah.
so the relationship was one of instant connect, and I'll say recognition, but the project wasn't time yet to develop, and we know who's in charge. So it wasn't until its timing came, and that was only through guidance, that we realized as a group, and by that time we were more than just 3 people, that you were the person to lead this. You always had been the person. You were assigned this a long time ago to lead A Course in Miracles, actually digitally. And so the whole world has you to thank, and Tara, of course, as your partner in the foundation, Tara Hollander, for the great gift that you gave us, but mostly your perspicacity and your stick-to-itiveness. You saw it in advance. You were given the vision a long time ago. You yourself had to grow into it as a person and professionally, as you say. And then everything came together. And as far as I can tell, since I wasn't a daily worker on this, but was an observer, it seemed very smooth to me and very blessed and very happy.
That was really, like, if I compare to the projects I did before, I think the main difference was the smoothness and the peacefulness that came, of course, from my work, but it's also, if everyone in a project thinks, okay, peace is more important than whatever we're talking about, it makes a really huge difference. So that was really a gift in the last year and a half to work with Tara and the greater foundation on this, because there was so much love that I didn't usually find in high-paced business projects for companies.
It's just a good example. I think it's a really good example how when you bring A Course in Miracles consciousness to whatever you do, whether it's in a digital program, a legal program, a medical program, a social program, it doesn't really matter. It's that you're bringing a state of mind, and you're bringing some concepts that you believe in, and you're determined to try to live that way with, of course, help from the highest source, because that's the only way you can do it. Things happen in a totally different way, and you can see the difference, and it's reinforcing. So it's going back to the book all the time to remind yourself, I could see peace instead of this. This is the way I want to live. This is the way I want to be with people. I want not to judge the people I'm with. I want to live in a positive, constructive way with them, always asking for higher guidance together.
I want to just echo what Judy said there, Felix. For sure, that web edition is super, super helpful for me. I use it every day. And I also love highlighting sections. And when I paste it, it just, there's is that the citation or attribution? I forget the term for that, but it's right in there.
We call it annotation. Yeah, but it
annotation.
Matter, yeah.
Annotation. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
But citation makes sense as well. Yeah. So
yeah. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the whole citation adding. That was something we were getting from our early access users. That then they were like this website has the audience like the normal students, but it's also the audience for somebody who needs those citations maybe more because they send emails with it or so. So, and for that audience, we got the feedback again and again. That would be really nice to have that. And then we said, yeah, well, then we do it. So, yeah, and you have the link back so the person reading can click on it and then they can see the context of whatever you quoted from, which I always like. If I get a line and it inspires me, I like to click on it to see where it came from and maybe to read a little more left and right. So yeah, it was a really inspiring a time to develop this, and I'm looking forward to doing more of it.
How
Go ahead. No, I'm shutting up.
I don't want to interrupt you. I just get so excited talking about it. Keep on going. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't. I was finished. Please.
I was just thinking how, they say when the time is right, when the teacher is ready, the student comes. We have a lot of cliches that we use in all of our languages, but timing is so interesting because I could see why this web edition could be needed. And I could get strong inner guidance that we must go ahead with it. But I didn't really think it would be a tool for me because I'm book addicted, and being co-publisher of the first edition that Helen gave me the manuscript, so I'm very book attached. But little did I know, by the time the web edition was ready, we had it digitized, everything was ready, that my eyesight would start to fail with macular degeneration, and I cannot read a book anymore. So here I have just what I need. I can make the type as large as I want. We at one time thought of having a special edition for people who are, had difficulty with their sight. It was in Braille from almost the beginning, but I'm talking about people who were sight impaired as I am now. And we never got around to it. Well, now I know why. We didn't need to. I love that. I just love the idea that it's not in our hands.
Yeah. Felix, hearing your story, actually, a lot of these interviews we do, it's just shocking to me how clear, I barely know you, but just how the little you've told me so far, it seems like the dots kind of connect for where you're supposed to be, exactly where you are at each time. But I'm sure as you're going through it, that's not always clear, but it seems like you're in the right spot.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Some of the things, if you're talking about dots connecting, like how we have a transition in the person who did the print book is I know, but maybe 85 or 90 or somewhere in between. She will hopefully forgive me for not knowing exactly, but it's clear she will retire at some point. So I'm learning what she did, and I can do that because I had a job as a student when I was in high school at a typesetting business. So my role was to do edits and work in typesetting. So typesetting is before it gets to the printer. So the author has a manuscript, like a Word file, and then it needs to be typeset, and then it can be printed. So that was my student job, and it was a good student job. But now I realize it taught me so much about page layout and all these little things about punctuation and how a paragraph should not end on a new page, and all these things that you don't know until you really consciously think about it. And that prepared me for something that came up just like a year ago. So this helping the handover of the printed book.
Isn't it satisfying and fulfilling and kind of wondrous when you look back at your life and you realize, as Matt says, how the dots connect? If I wasn't here at a certain time, I wouldn't have met this person. If I didn't take this job, I wouldn't have been able to move on to that. Well, I look back at my life, and my interest was always in literature and journalism and creative writing, anything to do with writing. Later on, not so far later on, my early 20s, it was in consciousness and parapsychology. So that was sort of my route. But my very first job out of graduate school, I couldn't get a job, was as a secretary in a publishing house of all things. And it was a college text publishing house. I mean, how silly can you get? So for 3 years before my first child was born, I was the secretary to an editor in a publishing house. And I learned everything that I needed to learn because I was his secretary and I had to know what he knew. One of the things I learned when it came time to publish the course, I never thought we were going to do it ourselves. And Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford, the co-scribes of the course, and Ken Wapnick and I were interviewing a lot of different publishers because people came forward and said they were interested in doing this. And none of them seemed right. Our inner guidance, so we said no. And when we finally got the idea that we were supposed to do this ourselves, how could we do it ourselves? I remembered, well, what did I learn from my job, my very first job that I had when I was in publishing? I learned any fool can do it. So I met all kinds of people. I didn't think they were wonderful people and good to work with, but I didn't think that they were, at the top echelon. They weren't rocket scientists, put it that way. I figured, well, they can do it. I can do it too. And so those 3 years when I thought that I was really wasting my education as a secretary, I wasn't wasting anything at all.
Wow. That's amazing how that all works. Now self-publishing is in vogue, but it wasn't back then. All the power lie with the publishers, or at least we thought that, right?
Yes, we did.
Very interesting.
Well, it's just, I still think of the word wondrous when I think of our journey and all the people that we hear from and all the many people who write in notes or emails, or that they're just so grateful for this material, equally grateful as we were to receive it and study it. So we have this vast community of people we don't even know, and some of them we do, out there in 28 different languages, with 2 more to come, studying the course, and gives us such a feeling of continuity and connection.
Indeed. Well, Felix, go ahead, Judy.
No. I just wanted to thank Felix for his work in Germany and internationally, because he's so involved in that.
Felix, I always like to ask guests if they have something that's kind of their go-to when, maybe guilt or anger or anxiety or depression or something comes up and you're very caught in the form of duality and it all seems so real. Is there anything you do that kind of brings you back a little bit and you can get a little space and think about things? Is there any tools you use from the course?
Well, what I go always back to is I need do nothing. And I've been doing, like, if I feel guilty or if I feel sad, or if I feel whatever, I think for me, what really helps me is to know that I don't need to change this. It's okay. And then it usually passes. So I need do nothing. I don't even need to fight the bad emotion. I just need to trust that under that bad emotion, there's my true self, which has nothing to do with the bad emotion. And if I don't put more gas onto that fire, by me trying to fix my emotion, but just observing it and saying, okay, it's not true. but I don't need to fight it. I can let it be. And that's usually the moment when it starts to grow away. It becomes like, as opposed to a solid wall, it becomes like a mist. And yes, it's still there. Or maybe I still have a headache, but it's not, I don't need to fight it anymore. And so stopping the fight against these things that upset me, or against my upset, and just accepting, okay, right now I'm obviously not completely ready for peace, but maybe I'm at least ready to not fight myself, and just accepting where I am. That for me is the door out.
Beautiful.
It is a mist of a grievance. That'd be a good band name.
As long as I need to find the perfect lesson for the grievance to go away, I give the grievance such an importance. But if I can just sit there, but then I'm then today is a grievance day. Doesn't matter. That's the moment when I can laugh again, and then of course the grievance is gone. So it's like a paradox. By doing less, I go to a peaceful state much more quickly than I would if I were to like really work on the grievance. Blah blah blah.
I think it's also excellent advice.
Yeah. It sounds like a fever breaking the way you describe it. It just breaks and then you can see it differently.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a wonderful chat, Felix. Judy, do you have any questions or comments for Felix?
I'm just sitting here in gratitude.
Yeah. Me too. Well, Felix, I know you run a podcast in German. Do you want to let listeners know how they can find that?
Sure. I run the podcast. Do we have time for the story that Judy connected me and Andy? Or should I just say the website and be quiet?
I've got time.
Going.
Keep going, yeah. So that was a funny, interesting story. In 2014, Judy met me, or I met her. We met, and she also met another person from Germany who lives 50 miles from where I live. And she always said, like, to each of us individually, you guys should do something together. And we were like, yeah. Mm-hmm. But we were not ready or whatever. And now, only last year, I remembered that Judy said that, and I started to work on the digital edition. So it felt like a move out from the old job to a more course-centric life, in a sense. And so I reached out to Andy Wagner, and we started a podcast. We decided to start a podcast with a third person, David Nitschke, who organizes the seminars from Gary Renard. So if Gary Renard comes to Germany, David organizes his seminars, and I knew him. So the three of us have a monthly podcast that is called Radically Non-Dual, or Radikal Non-Dual in German. And that's also the website. So it's Radikal in the German spelling minus nondual.de, because it's in Germany. But probably just Google Radikal Non-Dual and you'll find it.
Oh, that's great. So for any German listeners out there, check out the Radical Non-Dual podcast with Felix and co. Well, Felix, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. This is a great chat, and good luck with everything you have going on. And hopefully you can come on the show again sometime.
I'd love to be back.
That would be fun.
Thanks so much for listening today. Please subscribe to Miracle Voices by hitting the subscribe button on your podcast app. If you are enjoying these conversations, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use. And lastly, please visit us at miraclevoices.org and join our newsletter so we can stay connected. Until the next podcast, I want to leave you with my favorite course quote: "When you want only love, you will see nothing else."